The gravel crunched under my shoes, but it wasn't the usual sound. Normally, that crunch was swallowed by the steady low rumble of my car cooling off after a drive, the faint tick-tick-tick of the engine winding down. But tonight, silence. Nothing. The driveway stretched out like an open wound. Empty, raw, wrong. At first I thought maybe I parked on the street. I spun, scanning both sides of the road. The sodium street lamp buzzed and hummed overhead, throwing its sickly orange light across the cracked pavement. But no, the space was bare. My chest tightened. The smell of gasoline hung faintly in the air, like a ghost of what used to be. I stormed inside. The house smelled like burnt coffee and cheap lavender candles, a clashing, sour combination that made my stomach flip. And there she was, my mother, sitting at the kitchen table, casually flipping through a stack of envelopes. The kind of calm that only comes when you know you've done something and you're proud of it. "Where's my car?" I demanded, my voice slicing through the stillness. She didn't flinch, didn't even look up, just kept sorting the mail like I'd asked her what the weather was. "Oh, don't worry," she said, finally glancing at me with that smile, the one that always made me feel like a child being scolded. I sold it. My knees nearly buckled. "You what? You don't need it anymore." She waved her hand like she was brushing crumbs off the table. It was just sitting there. Family comes first, not some rust bucket. Her words hit harder than a slap. That car wasn't a rust bucket. It wasn't just a car. It was mine. Years of night shifts, saving dollar by dollar, going to work reeking of fryer grease, my fingers raw from lifting boxes, and now it was gone because she decided it didn't matter. I swallowed, my mouth dry as paper. "Who gave you the right?" Her smile widened. And then, like it was nothing, she reached into one of the envelopes and pulled out a crumpled wad of cash. She smoothed the bills out with her palm, the faint crackle of paper filling the silence. "Don't be dramatic. This is for the family. You'll see." The kitchen clock ticked above her, every second like a hammer striking the back of my skull. My hands shook. I wanted to snatch that money out of her hands, throw it across the room, scream until the neighbors called the cops. But instead, I froze, my throat a locked cage. She leaned back in her chair, the wood creaking under her weight. "Besides," she added, tapping the edge of the cash against her chin, "I got a decent price for it. More than it was worth." The metallic hook where my car keys always hung was empty. Just a dull piece of bent metal, catching the light. I stared at it, feeling like my whole chest was collapsing inward. I forced myself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. The smell of burnt coffee filled my lungs, bitter and sharp. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was enjoying this. My mom, the woman who used to cut my sandwiches into triangles, was savoring this moment of control. "Why would you do that?" I whispered, my voice breaking. She shrugged, careless, like she hadn't just ripped out the only piece of independence I had. "Because I can." The words slithered into my ears, and I swear the room tilted. "Because I can." That was it. No justification, no apology, just a declaration of power. I turned on my heel, the floorboards groaning under my weight, and stumbled down the hallway. My old bedroom door was still half covered with faded band posters, curling at the edges. I slammed it shut, the sound rattling the frame. My chest heaved as I pressed my forehead against the door. My fists clenched. Every nerve screamed for me to march back out there, grab that envelope, and demand what was mine. But then I heard it, the soft crinkle of bills being counted, one by one, like a taunt. I pressed my palms to my ears, but the sound wormed through anyway. "Count, count, count." Each bill a nail in the coffin of my trust. And then, as if fate wanted to twist the knife deeper, I caught the faintest murmur of her voice. I couldn't make out the words at first, but then clearer. "He doesn't even realize what I'm capable of." My stomach dropped. The room suddenly felt too small, the air too thick. The faint smell of dust from the old carpet choked me. I ripped open my window, cool night air rushing in, carrying with it the faint scent of cut grass and gasoline. My heart hammered in my chest. What did she mean by that? What else was she capable of? I sat on the edge of my bed, the springs squealing beneath me. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the glow of the screen slicing through the dark. A message from a neighbor. "Hey, saw your mom talking to some guy while they were towing your car. Thought you knew." I read it 3 times, each word stabbing sharper than the last. Some guy? Towing. Not just sold. Showcasing it, making sure everyone saw. My hands trembled as I typed back. Do you know who he was? Three dots blinked. Then the reply. Didn't get a name. Tall, fancy watch, big grin. She looked real proud. I shut my eyes, while rising in my throat. The image painted itself without my permission. My mom laughing, proud, showing off the deal like she'd won the lottery. My humiliation wasn't enough. She needed an audience. The clock ticked again, louder this time. I stood up so fast the chair scraped across the floor. My reflection stared back at me from the dark window, eyes wide, chest heaving, lips pressed into a thin line. No, this wasn't just about a car. This was about control. About her needing to remind me that no matter how old I got, no matter how hard I worked, she could always snatch it all away with one snap of her fingers. I paced the room, the boards creaking beneath each step, the scent of lavender seeping under the door, mixing with the gasoline that still clung to my clothes. My hands balled into fists. I couldn't just let this go. But the question was, what was I going to do about it? I turned sharply toward the door, ready to confront her, demand answers, maybe even take the money back. My hand hovered over the knob, sweat slicking my palm. I twisted. The door creaked open a crack, but before I could step into the hallway, her laughter floated down it. Low, smug, tinged with something that made my skin crawl. Some people just don't understand who's in charge, she murmured to herself. I froze. My pulse thundered in my ears. She was talking about me. My grip tightened on the doorknob. I could storm out right now, scream until the walls shook, rip the illusion of control right out of her smug hands. Or I could hold it in, let her think she'd won, let her bask in the power she thought she had. The envelope of cash rustled again, sharper this time, like a whip cracking. I pictured it, stuffed fat, sitting on the table while she smiled to herself. And that's when something shifted inside me. I didn't just want to confront her. I wanted to make her feel exactly what I was feeling, powerless, blindsided, humiliated. But to do that, I'd need patience and precision. My hand slipped from the doorknob. Slowly, carefully, I stepped back into the shadows of my room. My reflection in the window didn't look scared anymore. It looked calm, cold, calculating. The faint smell of lavender drifted in again, mixing with the bitter aftertaste of burnt coffee still clinging to the air. And I thought, for the first time in years, maybe she wasn't as untouchable as she wanted me to believe. Because if she could take from me without asking, then maybe it was time I took something from her. I sat back down on the bed, my hands no longer trembling, my heartbeat steadying into a slow, deliberate rhythm. But as I leaned back, I caught sight of something I hadn't noticed before. On the dresser, tucked halfway behind an old jewelry box, was a folded receipt. Crisp, new, out of place among the dust. I pulled it free, the paper cool and smooth against my fingertips. My eyes scanned the print, and when the words registered, the breath caught in my throat. It wasn't just the car. She'd already started spending the money. And not on bills, not on family, not on anything that made sense. The receipt was for a luxury spa resort booking. I stared at it, my vision blurring, the smell of fresh ink from the receipt sharp in my nose. My mother had stolen my car, my hard-earned freedom, so she could pamper herself at some overpriced paradise. My fists clenched around the paper, crumpling it into a ball. Heat surged through me, my skin prickling, ears ringing. And then I heard her chair scrape back against the kitchen floor. Her footsteps moved toward the hallway. Closer, closer. I shoved the receipt into my pocket just as her shadow stretched across my bedroom door. Her knuckles rapped lightly against the wood. "We need to talk," she said, her voice sweet as poison. I froze, heart pounding against my ribs. Did she know I'd found it? The door handle twitched. And I knew, whatever happened next, I had to be ready. The knock on my door shattered the silence like a hammer to glass. For a moment, I didn't move. My eyes stayed glued to the crumpled receipt in my hand, the faint scent of ink burning my nostrils. I could hear my heartbeat, each thud a drumbeat, pounding louder than anything else in the room. Her voice, sweet but thick with poison, crept through the cracks of the door. "We need to talk." I swallowed. My hands were shaking, but I fought to keep my voice steady. "I don't think there's much to say, Mom." The words were tight in my throat, like I had to force them out past the tightness. There was a pause. I could hear the rustle of her clothes, the faint click of her heels on the hardwood floor outside. She was standing there, her presence pressing against the door like a wall. "You're mad about the car," she said, her voice soft now, like she was the one who'd been wronged. "I get it. But you've been acting like a child about it. I stood still, my eyes trained on the door, feeling the cold air seep through the cracks. The smell of fresh rain drifted in from the open window behind me. It was almost suffocating, the damp, earthy scent mixing with the stale air in my room. Don't act like you did me a favor. I snapped, my fists tightening around the receipt. You sold it without asking, and now you're going to act like I'm the one being unreasonable. She sighed, and I heard the sound of her shoes clicking against the floor as she moved away. You don't understand, she said, almost pityingly. I'm trying to help you. You don't need that car. You've got other things to focus on. Something in me snapped. Her words were like a slap, even though she wasn't physically touching me. This was her all over again. Her, taking control, stripping away my choices, my freedom. She'd done it my whole life, but this time it wasn't just about telling me what to do. It was about making me feel small for wanting something for myself. I threw open the door before I could stop myself. The hall stretched out before me, dark and silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. She stood at the end of the hallway, her back turned, her hands clasped in front of her like she was holding something back. What do you want me to say? She asked, not even looking at me. I did what I thought was best. Why don't you just trust me? My stomach twisted, the tension coiling like a rope around my ribs. You're not the one who gets to decide what's best for me anymore. I watched her flinch. Just for a second, her shoulders dropped, the calm facade slipping. But then she straightened up again, and the cold, calculating smile returned to her face. You think you're smarter than me, don't you? She said, turning to face me. Her eyes were sharp, like a hawk's. Like you've got it all figured out. But you don't. I've been doing this longer than you, and I know what's best. It hit me then. This wasn't just about a car. This wasn't even about money. This was about control. It had always been about control. I opened my mouth to respond, but my phone buzzed on the dresser. It was a message from my neighbor again. Saw her with a guy today. Some real smooth talker. She was all smiles. My stomach churned. My pulse raced. I stared at the message, the room closing in on me. Who was this guy? The mention of him felt like an intrusion on a wound I didn't even know was there. Who's the guy you're working with? I asked, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Her smile faltered for just a second, her eyes narrowing. What guy? She said, her voice suddenly icy. You're imagining things. Just drop it, okay? I could see the shift in her. Her shoulders were stiff, her jaw clenched tight, like she was fighting to keep a secret buried. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized she wasn't just protecting herself. She was protecting him, the guy she was hiding, the guy who'd probably taken my car for next to nothing and left me with nothing. I didn't care how much it stung, how angry she was. She had crossed a line, and I was done letting her get away with it. I needed answers. I forced my voice to stay steady. Tell me who he is. She took a step forward, her hand outstretched like she was going to stop me, calm me down. But it only made me step back, the space between us growing wider. Just let it go, okay? She said, softer now, her voice almost pleading. This isn't about you. This is about me, doing what I need to do to get by. There it was again, her needs. Always her needs. You're taking from me, I said, my voice rising. Everything you do is about you, and then you leave me to pick up the pieces. I'm not your damn pawn anymore, Mom. Her eyes narrowed, her lips curling into something I hadn't seen in years, pure, unfiltered anger. You think I wanted to do this? You think this is easy for me? Her voice was a low growl now, the sweetness replaced with venom. You think you can just walk into my life and demand answers? This is my life, not yours. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My breath caught in my chest. For a moment, I saw something in her eyes, a flicker of fear, maybe. Or maybe it was just guilt. She was scared, but not for me. For herself. My mind raced, the fury churning inside me like a storm. I could see it all now, the twisted web she'd woven around me for years. The guilt, the manipulation, the lies. But it wasn't just the lies that hurt. It was the realization that I'd let it happen. That I had been so desperate for her approval, so desperate for love, that I let her walk all over me for so long. I'm done, I whispered, the words almost foreign in my mouth. I'm done letting you control me. Her lips trembled, and for a split second, I thought she might break. But then she straightened up again, the wall coming back up. You'll regret this, she said, her voice cold, her eyes colder. You think you can just take everything from me? You don't know what I'm capable of." I felt a cold shiver crawl down my spine. Those words, they weren't just a threat. They were a warning. The door slammed behind her as she stalked off, leaving me standing there, frozen in the hallway. I didn't even know what to think. What had just happened? I walked back into my room, my mind racing. The walls seemed to close in on me as I sank onto my bed. I stared at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it all. But nothing made sense. And then, like a kick to the chest, it hit me. I had no idea what was coming next. But whatever it was, I wasn't backing down. There was something deeply wrong here, something that had been festering for years. And if I wanted to get my life back, I was going to have to face it head on. But how? Where did I even begin? I didn't have the answers. But the one thing I knew for sure was that I wasn't going to be the one to back down this time. And somehow, I had a feeling that the person who would regret this the most wasn't going to be me. I didn't sleep that night. The bed felt too soft, too still, like it was mocking me for not being able to escape the noise in my head. I tossed and turned, my mind replaying my mom's words, her icy threats. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face, cold and unreadable, the faint echo of her voice, "You'll regret this," lingering like a bitter aftertaste. The early morning sunlight was already creeping through the blinds when I finally gave up on trying to sleep. I pushed myself out of bed, the stale smell of lavender clinging to the air, mixing with the sour tang of anxiety in the pit of my stomach. I barely noticed the smell of burnt toast wafting from downstairs as I grabbed my phone, still buzzing with a string of notifications from friends checking in. I didn't have the energy for pleasantries, so I silenced the ringer and locked my phone. It wasn't until I stepped into the kitchen that I felt the weight of everything settle over me. My mom was there, her back to me, humming a tune I didn't recognize while she stirred something in the pot on the stove. The sunlight hit her in such a way that it almost looked like she was glowing, like she was untouchable. But there was something different in the air, something off. I could feel it deep in my bones, a change I couldn't explain. She didn't even glance up when I walked in. The toast popped from the toaster, and she spread butter on it with that same mechanical calmness she always had. I could hear the scrape of the knife, the soft hiss of the pan behind her. It made me feel small, like everything was routine for her, like the storm in my chest didn't even matter. "Are you going to make yourself something to eat, or are you just going to stand there?" she asked, not looking up. I stood frozen, the words catching in my throat. "Why did you really sell the car?" The question slipped out before I could stop it, sharp and direct. She didn't stop stirring. "What do you mean, why?" It was just sitting there. Her voice was too light, too casual, like she was brushing off something trivial. I leaned against the counter, the cool wood pressing into my back as I tried to control the anger bubbling inside me. "Stop pretending. You know it wasn't just about the car." She paused, the wooden spoon hovering over the pot. I could feel her eyes on me now, the weight of her gaze like a physical presence. The moment stretched out, thick with tension. Then she slowly set the spoon down. "You don't know anything," she said, her voice dropping low. There was a shift in the air, something colder in her tone. I did what I had to do. I wasn't prepared for the coldness in her voice. I wasn't prepared for the sudden realization that she wasn't hiding something small. She was hiding everything. "You really think I don't know what you've been doing?" I shot back, my pulse racing. The kitchen suddenly felt too small, too suffocating. "Who's this guy you're working with?" "The one who bought my car." Her expression froze for a moment. Just a flicker, a crack in the perfect mask she wore. Then she turned back to the stove, as if nothing had happened, and picked up the spoon again. "Don't you worry about him," she said, her voice now thick with something I couldn't quite place. Was it fear? Guilt? She quickly added, "He's just helping out. You wouldn't understand." "Helping out with what?" I demanded, stepping closer, my heart pounding in my chest. "You've got some secret deal going on, don't you? What's he paying you for? Why does he get to walk away with my car, and you just pretend nothing happened?" My words hung in the air between us, sharp and demanding. The quiet hum of the stove was the only sound now, but it felt deafening. And then, finally, she turned around. The look in her eyes wasn't the calm facade I had come to expect. There was something there, something raw, but it wasn't a look of regret. It was a look of warning. "You really want to know?" she asked, her voice a hiss now, her hands gripping the counter so tightly that her knuckles turned white. My throat went dry. "Yes." She didn't speak immediately, just stared at me, her lips pressed tight. The silence stretched out again, but this time it wasn't comfortable. It was suffocating. Then, in a low, controlled voice, she said, "You think you're the only one who's had to fight for anything around here? You think this family's been a fairy tale?" Her laugh was bitter. "I've been working behind the scenes for a long time, and I'm not done yet." I took a step back, my mind racing, trying to make sense of what she was saying. "What are you talking about? What's going on? You don't get it, do you?" Her voice was cold now, all sweetness stripped away. "I'm protecting you, in my own way. You think you can handle everything on your own, but you don't know the half of it." She paused, almost like she was trying to decide whether to say more. Her eyes flicked to the window, and I followed her gaze, my heart pounding in my chest. The sound of footsteps outside broke the moment, and we both turned toward the door. My hand instinctively reached for the back of the chair, gripping it like it might anchor me to reality. There was someone out there. Someone close. I didn't hear the car pull up, didn't hear the doorbell ring. But I could hear the footsteps. They were heavy, purposeful, and they were coming closer. "Who is that?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. She didn't answer. She just gave me a look, one I'd seen before. The kind of look that made me feel like I was 5 again, small and insignificant, invisible in my own home. But I wasn't 5 anymore, and I wasn't going to back down. "Mom, who is it?" I demanded again, stepping toward the door. She stood still, her back turned to me now, but her posture was tense. I could see her fingers twitching, almost like she was calculating whether to stop me or not. "I told you," she said, her voice tight. "You wouldn't understand. Just leave it alone." But I wasn't leaving it alone. I couldn't. Not anymore. I reached for the door handle, and just as my fingers brushed the cool metal, the sound of the footsteps outside stopped. The silence stretched out. Then, a sharp knock on the door, louder than anything I'd ever heard before. I froze. My breath hitched in my throat. My mother, standing in the kitchen, didn't move a muscle. The air was so thick with tension, I could almost taste it. "Answer the door," I said, my voice rough. "Who is it?" She took a deep breath. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, almost resigned. "You're not ready for this." I reached for the door anyway, ignoring the knot tightening in my stomach. Just as my hand touched the knob, the door swung open. Standing there, framed by the doorway, was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark suit that looked too expensive for this neighborhood. His eyes locked onto mine with an unsettling calm, and I could almost feel the cold air from outside rush into the room. My heart skipped a beat. I knew, in that moment, that everything had just shifted. This wasn't just about the car. It never was. I stared at the stranger, my throat dry. "Who are you?" I managed to say. His lips curled into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I'm the one your mother's been working with," he said. The room seemed to close in around me. And that's when I realized nothing in this house was as it seemed. The man's smile didn't reach his eyes. In fact, there was something about it that made my skin crawl. He was standing there, a shadow stretching across the doorway, his dark suit sharp against the bright morning light spilling from the hallway. The air around us seemed to get colder, the warmth of the kitchen fading into something unsettling. I should have shut the door then. I should have asked him to leave. But instead, I just stood there, rooted to the spot, unable to look away from his cold stare. "I'm the one your mother's been working with," he repeated, his voice smooth, almost too smooth, like a predator trying to lull its prey into comfort. I felt the weight of his words drop like a stone into my chest, the shock spreading through my body. My mouth went dry. It was like the world had stopped moving for a second, the only sound in the room the echo of my breath. My mother still hadn't moved. She hadn't said a word since his arrival. I couldn't even tell if she was holding her breath, too, or if she was simply pretending he didn't exist. But I wasn't pretending. I wasn't going to let her hide behind this man. "What do you mean by working with?" I finally managed to choke out, my voice tight with disbelief and rage. The words felt like they were coming from someone else, someone who wasn't frozen in place by the weight of the situation. But I couldn't help it. My hands were shaking as I gripped the doorframe. The man took a step forward, his leather shoes making no sound against the floor, his presence slowly encroaching upon the space I had once thought was safe. My heart hammered in my chest, but I didn't step back. I couldn't. "You wouldn't understand," he said, his words deliberately slow, calculated. "But your mother and I have a mutual interest, and you've been in the way." His words hit me like a slap, cold and jarring. The implication hung in the air like a thick fog, suffocating me. In the way, I spat, taking a step forward, daring him to say something else. What do you mean? What the hell is going on here? My mom turned then, her eyes narrowing into something sharp, something I hadn't seen before. But it wasn't the fear I expected. No, her face was painted with something far colder, something like resolve. A part of me was terrified at how quickly she had slipped back into her mask of control. Enough, she said, her voice hard, no longer pleading, no longer apologetic. You don't need to know anymore. The man behind her stepped fully into the room, now towering over me, his eyes never leaving mine. He was tall, imposing. The smell of expensive cologne clung to him, a sharp, synthetic scent that almost made me gag. I'm here to make things right, he said, his voice low and smooth, like the calm before a storm. There's a lot of money at stake here, and you're not part of the plan. It's better if you just stay out of the way. I could feel the anger building in my chest, a fire starting to rage inside me. The thought of being dismissed, of being treated like an obstacle, it ignited something I couldn't ignore. Stay out of the way? You think I'm just going to let you walk all over me? You and my mom. I turned to my mother, my eyes burning with the question I needed to ask. How long has this been going on? I demanded. How long has he been part of this, whatever the hell this is? She looked away, her lips pressed tightly together, but the brief flicker of guilt in her eyes told me everything I needed to know. She hadn't been completely honest. There had been more to her actions than I'd ever realized. And now, I was standing on the edge of something I wasn't prepared for. The man took another step forward, blocking the doorway, making it impossible for me to escape or think clearly. His gaze never left mine, and there was a smugness in his eyes, like he knew something I didn't. It doesn't matter how long this has been going on, he said, voice dripping with calm superiority. What matters is that you're going to make things difficult for all of us if you don't accept the way things are. Your mother has been doing what she needs to do to survive. You're the only one who doesn't get it. Survive? My blood ran cold. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to scream, to tear down the walls of this charade, but something held me back. It was like I was caught in a web, every move I made only tightening the strands around me. What do you want from me? I asked, my voice hoarse, trying to find some shred of control in the chaos swirling in my chest. What do you really want? He gave a slow, almost pitying smile. We don't want anything from you. We just want you to leave. Leave. The word stung like acid in my throat. I didn't know how to respond. Every part of me wanted to resist, to fight, but I was outnumbered. For the first time in years, I felt utterly small. Not just small, powerless. I turned back to my mom, the woman who had always been my anchor, the one who had always told me we would fight together. And now, she was the one holding me back. She was the one who had brought this man into our home, who had played a part in this twisted game. Why are you doing this? I whispered. You never told me any of this. You kept me in the dark for so long. Her eyes softened for a fraction of a second, but then the wall was back up. You wouldn't understand, she said again, quieter this time. It's for the best. You have to trust me. Her words twisted in my gut, but I couldn't stop myself from asking. What are you hiding? Before she could answer, the man let out a low chuckle, like he was enjoying the confusion he'd caused. She's protecting you in her own way, he said. But that's not enough anymore. There was something chilling in his tone, something dangerous I hadn't noticed before. His words didn't just carry weight, they felt like a threat. And then, just as quickly as he'd come into the room, he took a step back, his gaze shifting from me to my mother, his lips curling into a tight smile. We'll be in touch, he said. The air around us shifted as if he were an apparition, not a real person at all. But his presence still lingered, thick and suffocating. He turned and walked toward the door, leaving my mother and me in a silence that felt deeper than any conversation could reach. But before he left, he glanced back, his eyes locking with mine, and in that brief moment, I knew something. Something I couldn't explain, but I knew deep in my bones. This wasn't over. And what he'd said wasn't just a warning. It was a promise. The door slammed shut behind him, but the echoes lingered in the air like a threat I couldn't shake. I stood there, paralyzed, my mind racing, trying to piece together the fragments of the conversation that had just shattered everything I thought I knew about my mother. The man, he'd been so calm, so sure of himself, like he was already in control. And my mom. She didn't even blink when he left. Not even a single sign of relief. Nothing. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, the silence in the room swallowing me whole. It felt like my lungs were filled with concrete. The smell of the kitchen, the warm toast, the lingering scent of coffee, now seemed too heavy, too suffocating, like everything in this house had been tainted by what had just unfolded. "Mom," I said, barely able to hear my own voice. The words scraped against my throat. "Why didn't you tell me?" She didn't turn to face me right away. Her back was still to me, her hands working mechanically, chopping vegetables with a precision that felt disturbingly out of place. The knife hit the cutting board with sharp, rhythmic thuds. "Mom," I repeated, louder this time, my voice trembling with a mixture of anger and hurt. "Why didn't you tell me what was going on? What he was doing here?" Her hands froze mid-cut, the knife hovering in the air for just a second too long. She let out a long, shaky breath and then set the knife down, finally turning to face me. Her eyes were tired, darker than I'd ever seen them. There was something in them, some deep well of pain, something I wasn't prepared to face. "You're not ready to understand," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. But there was a tremble there, a crack in her usual unshakable facade. "Not ready?" The words burst out of me, raw and frantic. "How am I not ready? You've been lying to me for years. You've been letting me think everything was fine, that we were fine. You let me believe that the worst thing I'd have to deal with was some broken car. But now this guy, you've been working with him, doing, I don't even know what." My hands were shaking now, my chest tight, but I couldn't stop. "You've been letting me walk around in the dark while you were making deals with people I don't even know. This isn't just about money, is it? What have you gotten yourself into?" She didn't flinch, didn't step back, but I could see it in her eyes. The guilt, the regret. It was there, hidden beneath layers of defenses she had spent years building. "I didn't want you to get involved in all of this," she said quietly, her gaze falling to the floor. "I didn't want you to see how far I had to go to keep us safe." She paused, wiping a tear from her cheek that had escaped despite her efforts to hold it together. "I thought you were better off not knowing." I could feel the anger inside me boiling over, the rage mixing with disbelief. "Safe? Safe from what? From who? What could be so dangerous that you'd lie to me about it for so long?" She sighed, walking past me and leaning against the counter, her hand resting against the edge like it was the only thing keeping her standing. "You wouldn't understand," she repeated, almost too quietly to hear. "I've been trying to protect you. From him. From all of it." A lump formed in my throat. "Who?" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Who's him? Why are you acting like he's some kind of godfather and you're his what, underling? How deep does this go, Mom?" Her hands were trembling now, but she gripped the counter harder, like it might ground her. "It's not like that. I never wanted any of this to happen. But when your father left, when everything fell apart, I had no choice." Her voice quivered, the weight of her words suffocating me. "Dad." I blinked, not sure if I'd heard her correctly. I'd always known my father had left us. Hell, I remember the day it happened, the cold, silent goodbye. But I'd never heard her mention it like this. "What does Dad have to do with this?" She was silent for a long moment, her eyes distant. It was as if she was reliving a memory, a moment I wasn't part of. "You were too young to understand back then," she said finally, her voice low and distant. "But after he left, things changed. I started doing things I never thought I would have to do. People started offering help, and then one thing led to another. I couldn't stop it. I thought I was just keeping us afloat. But I was wrong. I didn't know what to say. My mind was spinning, my heart pounding. I didn't know who to be angry with anymore. Was it my mother for hiding all of this from me? Or was it my father for leaving her to deal with it alone? I wanted to scream, to run away from it all, but I couldn't. This was my reality now. The weight of the silence between us felt suffocating. I looked at her, really looked at her, for the first time in a long time, and for the first time, I didn't see just my mom, the woman who'd always been my protector. I saw someone who had been broken, someone who had made choices I couldn't understand. "I didn't want you involved in this," she whispered, finally turning to face me, her eyes red and swollen. "I didn't want you to know what I've done, what I've become. I'm not proud of it, but I'm trying to fix it. I'm trying to protect you." I shook my head, my heart hammering in my chest. "Protect me? By lying to me? By letting me live in this fairy tale while you're out there making deals with people like him?" I didn't care anymore that my voice was shaking, that the words were coming out all wrong. I've been living in the dark for too long, Mom. You can't protect me by keeping me in the shadows. She looked away, tears finally slipping down her cheeks. I thought it would be enough to keep you safe, just to keep you out of it. I thought if I could just hold things together, you wouldn't have to know the truth. I wanted to yell at her, to demand that she stop treating me like I was a child who couldn't handle the truth. But part of me understood. Part of me knew that what she had done, the choices she'd made, weren't out of malice. They were out of fear. Fear for me, fear for us, and I realized then that fear had been her driving force all along. There was another knock on the door. I froze. My heartbeat skipped a beat. I wasn't ready to face anyone else. I wasn't ready to deal with more lies, more truth I wasn't prepared for. But my mom's face went pale. Her eyes widened in terror, her entire body going rigid as she stared at the door. "Mom, what's going on?" I whispered, a chill running down my spine. She didn't answer right away. She was staring at the door as if it were about to burst open on its own. I heard the knock again, louder this time. Then came the sound of something scraping against the door. Something sharp. I glanced at my mom. Her eyes were wide with fear. "Answer it," I urged, my voice tight with anxiety. But she shook her head, backing away, the color drained from her face. "I can't," she whispered. Something in my gut twisted. "Mom, who is it?" Her mouth opened, but no words came out. And that's when I realized she wasn't the one keeping me safe anymore. The knock came again, sharper this time, followed by the sound of scraping. It wasn't the soft tap of a stranger's polite knock. It was an aggressive, insistent pounding, the kind you only hear when someone's desperate or dangerous. My heart raced, each beat echoing in my ears like a warning bell. My mom's face was a mask of terror. She couldn't look at me, couldn't even speak. I stood frozen in place, my own breath shallow, desperate to hold on to some semblance of control. But there was nothing I could do. She was no longer the rock I'd believed her to be. She was as terrified as I was. I took a hesitant step toward the door, but my mom lunged forward, grabbing my wrist with a grip so tight, it almost hurt. "Don't," she whispered fiercely, her eyes wide with panic. "Don't open that door." I stared at her hand wrapped around my wrist, her fingers trembling like she was holding on to something more than just me. It felt like she was holding on to the last thread of control she had left, the last piece of her that hadn't been consumed by whatever nightmare she had dragged us into. "What the hell is going on?" I hissed, my voice trembling with frustration and fear. "Who is it? What do they want?" She shook her head slowly, her face pale, the weight of years of secrets pressing down on her. She opened her mouth, but the words never came. Instead, her gaze flickered toward the door again, and I could see the muscles in her neck tense, the breath she drew in sharp and ragged. It was like she was already preparing for the worst. And then, without warning, there was a loud crash. The sound of glass shattering, followed by a thud. My heart dropped to my stomach. Someone was already inside. The door had been forced open. I barely had time to react before I heard a voice. Low, almost familiar. But not in the way I wanted it to be. Not in the way I needed it to be. "Where is she?" the man's voice called out, icy and cold. It hit me like a wave, and I froze. My legs turned to stone. I knew that voice. It was him. The same man who had been at the house earlier. The man my mom had let into our lives. My stomach churned. "He's here," I whispered, my voice trembling with disbelief. "He's here, Mom. What have you done?" My mom was already moving, her face drawn and pale as she grabbed my arm, pulling me away from the doorway. She started, but the words were lost, swallowed by the pounding in my head, the rushing sound in my ears. "We have to go. We have to get out of here." "Go?" I choked out, the panic rising in my throat. "You mean you're just going to run again? You want me to run, too?" My voice cracked as I glared at her. "Why are you running? What is it that you're so scared of?" She didn't answer me, only dragged me toward the back door, the roughness of her hands pulling me forward, her pace frantic. I had never seen her like this. My mother had always been strong, in control, everything I thought I could count on. But now, she was just like me, scared, lost, and desperate. We were halfway across the kitchen when I heard him again, his voice cold and mocking. "You think you can just walk away?" His tone dripped with menace, and my pulse spiked. "You can't hide from me forever." I glanced over my shoulder toward the door. The shadow in the hallway was unmistakable. The shape of a man, tall, broad, his figure looming like a dark cloud on the threshold. Every inch of me screamed to run, but my feet felt like they were glued to the floor. "Mom, who is he?" I asked again, my voice shaking, but this time there was a sense of desperation in my words. "What does he want?" But she didn't respond. Not right away. Instead, she yanked me harder, her eyes wild as she pushed me toward the back door. My pulse was so loud in my ears I could barely hear anything else. But I could hear his footsteps, heavy and deliberate, echoing down the hall. "Don't you dare let him catch us," she muttered, her breath coming faster. "I can't let him." Bang! The front door slammed open. I could feel the vibration through the floor beneath me, a thunderous tremor that made the walls seem like they were closing in. I didn't have to look to know he was here. I could hear his footsteps now, steady and slow, the sound of leather boots scraping against the wooden floor, echoing with an eerie finality. "Mom," I whispered, barely able to breathe. "What's going on? What did he mean? What does he want?" She didn't say anything for a long moment. She was still holding on to me with a grip that was too tight, too painful, and yet I couldn't pull away. I felt suffocated by her silence, by the weight of all the things she hadn't told me. She had lied to me my whole life, kept me in the dark, and now everything was unraveling right in front of my eyes. I glanced back toward the hallway again, my heart thudding. His silhouette was closer now, his broad shadow creeping along the walls. I could almost hear his breath. He was near. And then, a whisper, came the words I wasn't ready for. "He wants the money." The words hit me like a slap to the face. My whole body went cold. I stopped moving, stopped breathing for a beat, trying to make sense of what she'd just said. "What?" The word came out like a gasp, too shocked to form a full sentence. My mom glanced back at me, her face pale, her lips trembling as she finally spoke the truth. "The money from your dad. The inheritance. It's not just ours anymore, honey." Her voice cracked, the raw emotion underneath sending a shiver down my spine. "It's his. And now he's come to collect." I felt the room spin, my thoughts swirling. Everything about our life, our home, had just crumbled. It was all a lie. A carefully constructed, fragile lie that had only been waiting for someone to knock it down. And that knock? It was here. The words inheritance and money hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. My mom's confession felt like a betrayal, but it was more than that. It was a floodgate opening. Everything I thought I knew about my family, about her, was a lie. The ground beneath me felt unstable, like it could cave in at any moment. I couldn't breathe. "Mom, no," I whispered, my voice shaking. "No, this can't be real. You never told me this. Why didn't you say anything?" I felt a lump rise in my throat, the weight of all her secrets choking me, cutting off the words I wanted to say. But she didn't answer right away. She was still gripping my arm, her nails digging into my skin, as if she was trying to anchor herself to me. Her eyes, wide and frantic, never left the dark hallway where the shadow of the man loomed closer. Closer, until I could hear him breathing. She stopped herself, biting her lip as if trying to force the words back inside. She couldn't say it, not in front of me. I didn't need her to say it. I could feel the truth weighing on both of us. The inheritance wasn't just money, it was the price of our safety. And I had no idea how deep this rabbit hole went. Suddenly, the man's voice rang out again, a low growl that scraped at the walls, sending a shiver down my spine. "I know you're here, Margaret." He said her name, like it was a threat. I jerked back, my pulse hammering in my chest. "Margaret," I echoed, barely able to comprehend. That wasn't just any name. It was her name, my mom's real name, the one she never used, the one she buried. Her head snapped up to meet my eyes, panic flashing across her face. He's the one, the only one who knows me by that name," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. "He's the one." She trailed off, but I could see the guilt flicker in her eyes. This was no ordinary man. This wasn't just some stranger who showed up one day. I didn't have time to process that before the pounding at the front door started again. My heart pounded in my ears, louder than the knocks. My whole body went numb, a combination of fear and anger so sharp it made my fingers tingle. "Get down," my mom hissed, pulling me to the floor just as the man's boots hit the threshold with a force that rattled the house. The doorframe groaned under the pressure, and I could feel the vibrations in my bones. "What do you want from us?" I shouted, my voice trembling but desperate. "Why don't you just leave? This isn't your home. I want what's mine, came the reply, his voice like ice. Everything that was promised. Everything your mother swore to me. I felt a cold sweat prickling the back of my neck. My mom had never mentioned this. No hints, no warnings. She'd let me live in this house, walk through these rooms, completely unaware of the monster that was waiting just beyond the door. My mom's grip on me tightened again, this time with a kind of finality. We need to go. We need to leave, now. But there was nowhere to go. The back door was already locked, the windows sealed shut. The man was coming, and no matter how much we ran, no matter how much I screamed for help, we were trapped. Then, through the chaos, something clicked in my head. He was after me. All this time, I'd thought he was here for my mom. But no, this wasn't about her. This wasn't even about money. This was about me. Before I could say anything, my mom dragged me across the room, heading toward the basement stairs. I could hear the sound of the door breaking open behind us. The splintering would like a scream of its own. We were running out of time. I stumbled, catching my breath, my eyes darting between the basement door and my mom's terrified face. Mom, what's going on? What do you mean? You said this was about money. It's more than that, she snapped, her voice sharp, urgent. It's not just the inheritance. It's the family, my past. Your father, he made a promise. And now he's come to collect. I felt like the room was closing in on me. My father? I asked, barely able to comprehend. But he's dead. How can he be part of this? He made a deal, she said, her voice cracking. A long time ago. And it wasn't just about money. It was about power. Your father sold us. He sold me to him, and I had no choice. I never had a choice. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. My father had sold us. How could she have kept this from me? How could she have lived with it? The rage and disbelief bubbled inside me, burning hot in my chest. But before I could process that any further, the man's voice rang out, cold and menacing, cutting through the noise. I'm coming for you, Margaret. I looked at my mom in horror, her face pale, the weight of her past so heavy it was suffocating. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. But I had to. I had to do something. I had to fight back. Mom, I said, my voice tight with resolve. You're not doing this alone. Whatever happened, we're getting out of here. Together. She didn't look at me. Her eyes were locked on the door, her face set in that same frozen expression of fear. But I could see something else there, something darker. I grabbed her hand, holding it tightly. We're getting out of here. I'm not leaving you with him. But just as I said that, the door to the basement opened with a low creak. And standing there, silhouetted in the doorway, was him. The man who had been hunting us for years. The man who held our fate in his hands. And as his gaze locked onto mine, I knew this wasn't over. It was only just beginning.